Hello, my name is John Anderson. I'd like to share a brief soul-winning testimony from the White Mountain Apaches. A few months ago, I went to the White Mountain Apaches on a soul-winning trip, and it was near the end of the day, and I'd been soul-winning all day. We were about to leave, and this was going to be like my last door, and I walked up. There was a guy sitting on the porch. Well, I went up to him, and I said, hey, I offered him a tract, and I said, hey, Faithful Baptist Church just out giving people the gospel. I'm like, are you interested? I'm like, if you're asked if you're to die today, are you 100% sure you would go to heaven? He's like, no, I'm going to hell. I'm like, well, you can go to heaven. He goes, well, I can't go to heaven. He's like, I've killed people. He's like, I'm not a good guy. I'm like, well, it's not about being a good guy. It's not whether or not you're a murderer. It's about whether or not you have faith, and anybody can get saved. And no matter who you are, you need to get saved. So finally, he let me show him, and I started showing him, and he started crying. He said his mom had been put in prison for life when he was little, for murder, and his dad had killed himself after committing murder. He said nobody had ever showed him how you can go to heaven and how anybody can be saved. He pulled up his shirt and he had these marks all over his stomach. He'd been in a knife fight when he was 12 years old with the kid. The kid had stabbed him 9 times with a knife before he got the knife away from the kid and killed him, stabbing him 12 times. Well, then he was arrested and went to jail for second-degree murder. He was able to get out of jail on parole a couple years later and then became a gang member. The whole time giving him the gospel, I can just see a shed over by his dad's house, and I can just hear screams and banging sounds. And finally, he's just like, oh, don't mind over there. That's my friend over there. He's high on heroin. And then he starts saying, I used to be addicted to drugs, and that's horrible. He wasn't on drugs anymore. He had this little girl with him, and he was just crying the whole time I was giving him the gospel. And then I was able to get him saved finally. But he was just really apprehensive. He said, well, I've killed a bunch of people. He had done a lot of horrible stuff. He was like the head of a gang. And I finally convinced him that he can be saved too. And he prayed and got saved. And afterwards, he told me the reason why he was so shocked when I first showed up is because he didn't live at that house. He had no reason to be there. He said that the only reason why he was even at the house was because he had this feeling that he needed to be at the house, and that something was calling him to the house. And you know what? He probably was, because if he wouldn't have been there, he wouldn't have gotten saved. Well, finally the guy busted out of the shed. The door had been barricaded so he couldn't get out while he was still high. He starts swinging a belt around and hitting the wall of the house, and starts screaming at me, screaming at the guy I gave the gospel to. He's like, I'm leaving. And then the guy just starts saying, no, please. He's like, this kid just got me saved. He's like, he can show you how you could be saved and how you can overcome that addiction. And he's like, no, I don't want that. And he just grabbed the bag and he just started walking off down the road. Well, there were 2 other people. There were 3 other people with him. There were a couple women. And a kid was 14 or 15. I was able to get the kid saved. And then my brother, he got the women saved. And then later, as we were driving down the road, we were far out of town, and then we drove past that guy. He was just still walking down the highway, swinging that belt around, holding his bag. But you know what? I'm hoping that maybe if he comes back, the guys that got saved can show him how he can be saved too once he's not so high. I'd like to share another funnier story from the Navajo Reservation. So I was out sailing at the Navajo Reservation, and I saw these 2 guys. And I walked up and I offered them a Christmas CD, and I invited them to the movies that was going to be playing in town that day. And the guy, he was very interested, but pretty early on in the conversation, I realized that he was drunk, and his buddy he was with was just completely drunk. He started telling me about how he was in prison for armed assault, and he read the Bible in prison. And then he pulls up his shirt and he starts showing me his gun. I'm like, oh yeah, nice gun. And then his buddy, who's completely drunk, then he pulls out a bottle of hard liquor. He starts offering to sell me some hard liquor. I'm like, oh no, thanks. He's like, oh, it's just coffee then. He's like, it's not liquor. So you don't want some? I'm like, no. He's like, that's not liquor. So because he didn't want me to report him or anything. Well, then the guy just starts talking with me. They're both completely drunk. And I listen, just kind of humor these guys because they're both drunk, convicts, and one of them has a gun, so I didn't want to pick a fight. He starts telling me about how the Navajos, when they're friends, they call each other I'm not gonna say his word, but the N word. This is what he called you. So he's like, now if you were my friend, he's like, I would call you. And he's like, but you're not my friend, so I'm not calling you that. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And he's like, yeah, but us Navajos, that's what we call our friends. I've never heard of that, so I don't think he was telling the truth. Well, I got out there as fast as I could, but he really liked the CDs, and he acted interested in the movie, but I didn't see him there. At that time I was going soloing with my dad, and we were driving around town, and we were just going through like neighborhoods where there were only a few houses left, just kind of cleaning up the map and getting certain areas shaded in. So he dropped me and my brother off at this RV park, and he said to it was gated, and he said to just find a way in. So we were supposed to just wait for somebody to come through the gate, and then we could just go in after them when they opened up the gate, or we could just climb the wall if nobody was coming. So he sent us in because he knew that we wouldn't get in as bad trouble for climbing the fence if we got caught. Well, I start climbing and this guy shows up. He had Donald Trump or this old guy, and he just starts telling me, this is a HOA, you can't be here. He's like, you have to leave. I'm like, okay. So I just got off, so I'm just standing there, and he's like, I'm not leaving until you leave. So I'm like, okay, and I just walk 30 feet away. Then he pulls away, and I start climbing again. Then he pulls up again. So I just jump off the line, just take off running. Because I didn't want to get in a big fight with this guy. And he kept chasing after me, and he jumps out of his car. He's like, you stop there. And he left his car and drive. And it was a slow thing, and he starts yelling at me. I'm like, sir, your car's about to hit a wall. He's like, shut up, I don't believe you. I'm like, dude, your car's about to hit a wall. He's like, shut up. He must have thought, I just thought he was an idiot, because it's that trick. Then there was just this wild slamming sound, and he looks over, and his car, the front was just all dented, and it just hit the stone wall. And he's just like, he just looked at me like he just looked irate. And he just started yelling, he's like, I'm calling the police. And he just went to his car. And I'm walking away. I'm walking down the road to find my dad. And all of a sudden he just pulls up. He had followed me and he's just like, hey, I want your church's phone number because I'm going to call them and I'm going to tell your pastor what you're doing. He's not going to be happy. I'm like, well, my pastor's my dad. He's the one who told me to do that. He's like, well, I still want a tract so I can call your church. So I gave him the tract and he's like, I'm calling your church and I'm going to tell them what you did. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed these stories and I hope they've encouraged you to go soloing yourself so you can get cool stories like this. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.